Hey Tigers, Tony here. I'm talking to you from the Tiger Conference Room. Today we have three great topics we're going to cover. The first thing is called the marketing mix, and you're probably asking yourself, well, why do I need to know the marketing mix? Because I don't work in marketing, but it's a topic you should know. Then we'll go over a fantastic tool called the Lean Project Pathway. And then finally, we'll end on what I think is one of the most important topics for any program management, and that is working across teams. So we'll discuss V teams. All right, let's get started. Okay, Tigers, let's discuss the marketing mix. So first of all, as a program manager, you should not have to create the marketing mix. You can get this either from product management or marketing. And this is important to you as a product manager because it really is a great way for you to frame success of your project or program. It also helps you identify the customer segment you're targeting. So are you targeting large customers or small business or internal, for example? And the marketing mix, there are several different flavors of it. There's the 4 Ps, the 5 Ps, the 7 Ps, the 10 Ps, the 100 Ps, a lot of Ps. But for the purpose of this class today, we're going to talk about the 7 Ps. All right, so the first thing is the marketing mix. It refers to the tactics or the marketing activities to satisfy the customer's needs. It also positions the offering clearly in the minds of the customer. Now, the 7 Ps are this, and we'll go into more detail on the next slide. The first one is product, then you have price, then you have place, then you have promotion, you have people, you have process, and finally, physical. Let's talk about this in detail with an example. Okay, let's go into details for the marketing mix 7 Ps. But before I start, first of all, if you remember from previous classes, that our example we use, this is Tiger Coffee Machine example. So I'm carrying that over to here also. As you can see, we're going to have a lot to fill into the slide, so I've really shrunk myself down. All right, as I mentioned before, the first P is product, right? And this is what the company produces, whether it's a product or service or both. And this product ideally meets the needs of your core customer. Now, for our examples here, for the Tiger Coffee Machine example, our product is a facial recognition powered by artificial intelligence coffee machine. The price. Now, this is how much it's going to cost for the customer. And price is also a very good indication of where you want to position your product or service in the market, right? Low price, you're going to be a value brand. And for our examples here is the Tiger Coffee Machine, since it's actually a vending machine, it's going to be 25% below typical coffee houses once you sign up for your free membership. The place, now this is the location where your customers will actually purchase your product or service, and for example, stores or via app on a website. For our example, the Tiger Coffee Machine is going to be installed in convenience stores where there's a lot of foot traffic, both inside and outside the building. Kind of think of it like a bank ATM. Then you have promotion. How's the word going to get out? These are messages to customers that generate awareness and really hopefully get them to purchase your product or services. For our example, in the Tiger Coffee Machine, we're going to start off with social media, and then we'll have a mobile app store. We'll have also signage inside these convenience stores indicating where the Tiger Coffee Machine is. And the people. So these are going to be the people that will be interacting with your customers, and they'll be taking orders, complaints, all that type of activity for your product or services. For our example, the Tiger Coffee Machine, we're going to offer support through email and chat through the actual app. There'll be a call center, and they'll be able to work directly with the customer. Also, if you're actually at the Tiger Coffee Machine, the avatar will also be able to help you. Now, the process, this is what they call the customer journey. This is the way that your customer makes a purchase. how they request the information, they purchase it, and you want to make sure that they have a positive experience. So for our example, the Tiger Coffee Machine example, customers will download the app, they'll create an account, they'll change their preferences to suit them, they'll do a facial scan in the app, and then it will locate the closest location. They'll walk up to the coffee machine and then they'll order from the virtual barista who will greet them because they'll be able to identify them by facial recognition. And finally, the physical. This provides tangible cues of the quality of the experience that you're offering. Examples include physical locations. If you think of the Apple Store as a great example. Dress code. Everyone's dressed a certain way in the Apple Store, for example. And but for us, it's actually going to be physical coffee machines. It's not going to be any type of employees. All right, let's talk about one of my favorite tools. It's called the Lean Project Pathway. Now, you can use this for any program or project. However, I can tell you that this is especially good for programs that you're taking over from someone else and that need to be improved over the next 3, 6, 12 months. All right? So what is Lean? First of all, Lean, you might have heard about it, Lean, Six Sigma, all that stuff. It's really a process improvement approach. And it uses this idea of collaboration to improve performance. And what it does is systematically kind of removes this waste that exists in the system. And by reducing this process variation. And we'll talk about that on the upcoming slides. Now, what it does is it combines lean management, this idea of eliminating waste, with statistics, specifically Six Sigma, which is to increase the velocity of value creation in a business process. Do not worry, we are not going to cover statistics. I might do a video on certain statistics you might need in the future, but that won't be covered here. And the way it really works is what it does is it identifies and removes causes of friction, of defect, or errors. And finally, what it does is it minimizes the variability in any process or manufacturing process. All right, let's talk about the how. So how does Lean Project Pathway work? Well, first of all, as you can see, this is a pathway, and this is really going to give you steps where you're going to start and how you're going to get through the program until the end. You'll probably have to review your program several times, and as the program evolves, make some changes. Now, I often recommend starting at the end of the program or the goals to work your way back. For example, if you want to have twice as much sales of your product, find out what that is and work your way back to how many sales you're working now. All right, so as I said, this is a pathway. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the pathway and then break it down into more specific steps. The first thing is plan. Then you do, check, and act. You might have heard that before. You might have seen this in circles, but that's typical the way you work any project. Plan, do, check, act. Now, if we go one layer lower, in planning, you of course initiate a program. You do a current state assessment, what's going on today. Then future visiting state, right? What you want the program to be in the future. And then in the do part, this is really important. You do what's called a root gap analysis. So what that is doing, that's taking your future visiting state, looking at the current state of the program, and then finding the delta in there. Then, of course, by checking, you do testing and you implement it. And then once it's going, you put controls in. All right, let's break it down further so we know what each one of these steps in the pathway mean. So when you initiate, you pretty much define the problem that you're going to address. You create a charter that everyone can follow. Now, you need to schedule meetings with all the subject matter experts so you can understand that the knowledge gets transferred to you. You develop a communication plan, and we've talked about that already. You discover what the customer expectation is, and whether this is an internal tool or an external tool, you really need to know what the customers expect from your product or service. Then under the current state assessment, you map the current process, you look at the data, and then you start a knowledge transfer from all the subject matter experts that you discovered in the initiate phase. Then you look at all the metrics associated with your program. You really kind of do this assessment of environmental change. And then you begin to identify areas of improvement, because now you've really understand what's going on with all this knowledge transfer and you've looked at metrics. Then after you kind of get an idea of where there's potential for improvement, for the future state, first of all, you identify best practices. Then you want to determine the criteria for design and any constraints you might have. Again, you identify the changes that you want to make in the current state. Then you define the future state. Identify any types of measures or metrics for countermeasurement. And then you go over to the root cause gap analysis. Again, all you've done so far is you've kicked off your project. You've done some assessment of what's going on today. If it's a new project, there'll be nothing there. Then you look at what you want to achieve in the future, and now you're going to find the gaps, right? So you want to document all the causes of the challenges to achieve this future state. Now you're probably going to have more features or services or whatever than you can actually do in a time frame, so you need to prioritize your all your solutions. Identify any risks. We've done that previously, for example, the stakeholder analysis. And then you start to implement and test, right? So this is going to be a lot of new stuff in your program, so you're going to want to conduct some sort of knowledge transfer, like workshops. You want to make sure you have a lot of the updates done. You specifically select the tools that you want to change. And this is a great time to do a POC, or a proof of concept, to really see where the improvements are needed. And then finally, once you release it, you execute the change management plan that you've developed. You remember going from dev, test to production, for example, or design, manufacturing to the store. You want to make sure you execute the control plan to make sure you keep these gains going. And then you create a scorecard. Now, my belief is that actually in an initiate phase is a good idea to start thinking about the scorecard and watch it evolve throughout the program. And obviously, you want to continuously improve. So you probably will have to go through this whole iteration again. All right, now let's talk about an example. And of course, we're going to use our favorite product and service, the Tiger coffee machines. So first of all, Tiger coffee, let's just say that we're noticing that when there are long lines for these for customers to get their coffee, they tend to walk away. And what we really observe is once the line gets to 4 people, they walk away and then go to a coffee house. Now, our goal is to reduce the total time it takes for the customer to get their coffee by 25%. Okay? The existing state, customers are waiting too long. The future state, a shorter wait. And let's just for giggles assume that our product's been in service for about 6 months. All right, there's a lot on this slide, but we can cover it. So I'm going to go over all the plan, do, check, acts stuff. Initiate, current state, future state, root cause, implement, and test and control with this example. So under initiate, right? So as we mentioned before, we want to reduce the time it takes for customers to complete their transaction by 25%. Now, we decide to create documents that outline the scope, objectives, and what the participants are going to do. For example, a RACI could be done here, and we've covered that previously. We're going to schedule meetings with all the subject matter experts, so there's some sort of knowledge transfer. And this is where we really start to send out updates, right? We've talked about how important communication is in any program. And if there's an opportunity, we can survey customers. That doesn't necessarily mean we ask them anything, but we could observe them to see what their behavior is in line, for example. Then let's document and work with the current state assessment, right? So today, the customer walks up and an avatar greets them and ready to take their order. The order gets served to them. The avatar will ask for feedback or will be on the screen. They'll be able to give some sort of rating. Right after we do that, we'll meet with the program managers and devs, or I work in software, but you could also be working with the designers and operations, for example. You review the timing of the order. Review the change process that we have at Tiger Coffee. And then we also want to really take note of whatever the avatar is doing during the ordering process. See where we can get any kind of optimization from there. So that's what's happening today. Now we want to look in the future what we want the process to be. So the first thing you want to do is research best practices in the quick food service, right? Maybe we want to understand how Starbucks delivers their coffee so quickly. We want to make sure that any software updates we can do, it doesn't look like that it's feasible to change any of the ATMs out, so we'll have to strictly stick with software updates. And then ideally, once we deploy all these software updates, it streamlines the ordering process. And we're also adding some predictive algorithms to really shorten the order process. And those algorithms, what they should do is they predict what the customer wants to order even before they say anything. For example, Miss Customer, will you be having your regular X coffee today? And of course, we have to allow customers to opt out of this kind of predictive ordering. All right, so we have our current state, we have our future state. Now we want to find the gaps, and that's what we're going to work at as a program manager. All right, so the root cause is that the avatar follows the same ordering process for every customer, both new and existing. Predictive ordering for the existing should be based on previous orders. That's great if you have an established customer, but if it's a new customer, what we're going to do is the avatar will access the profile they set up when they set up their account. And of course, we have to address any security concerns, customer concerns. If there's any type of regional restrictions that we have to be aware of, software updates, outages, etc. All right, so we know our current state, our future state, and what the gap is between the current and future state. Now we need to go into implementation, right? So we need to train the internal teams on these feature updates. We got to let marketing know so that they can market the new changes. For example, the Tiger ATM coffee machines are getting a smarter and better customer service. That's how they can market it. We need to define the service roadmap with even future improvements. For example, I'm sure we had a lot of features we wanted to put in. We couldn't get to all of them. So we need to really have a roadmap for that. Now, one thing I like to use, so we could use Azure DevOps for the development and software deployment. I'll probably do a video on that, so look for that coming pretty soon. And then we'll roll out the software first to test markets to make sure that there's no glitches in it. Then after that, the controls we're going to use CI/CD, which is continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployment in Azure. And that's probably a new concept to a lot of people, so I'll probably do a video on that also. But you people in dev will know what I'm talking about. We'll constantly monitor the customer for transaction time. We want to make sure what we did isn't making it worse. For example, the customer comes up, the avatar says, "Oh, Tony, are you having your standard coffee that you order every day. And if all the customers are saying no, that's actually adding time. And then we'll include the program progress and any type of balanced scorecards. I think it's a good idea actually to start that scorecard in the initiate phase, at least for proof of concepts of a scorecard, and see it evolve through time. But the lean pathway example has it in the control phase. So we'll run 3-month sprints for updating the service. All right. And now we're going to move on to what I think is one of the most important topics, and that's V-teams. As a program manager, virtual teams are probably going to be one of the most important tools and activities you do. In fact, in every job interview that I've ever been at, one question I always get asked, what's your philosophy on working across teams? How do you get other people jazzed for your project? So this is how you do it. So virtual teams are very important, as I said. And the reason why is this is really how your program gets momentum, how things start working right and start progressing. And this is really how you'll be successful. Now, virtual teams are usually members on other teams in your organization. And as a program manager, you would be managing that virtual team. Now, it also can include members from other companies and vendors. Actually, right now, I'm working with one of my customers, and on the V team is actually some of their vendors working in my program. All right, so V teams is all about cross-group collaboration, and this is a great opportunity for you to shine in that respect. It also really expands the importance of your program because it gives you a wider audience. Now, I'm going to tell you, in program management, there's almost no way you could be successful unless you have a V team. Now, with a V team, you must get buy-in from other teams' leaders by explaining the value prop they get, right? So you just can't go ask people to volunteer for your program. That's not how it works. And then explicitly, you want to evangelize the benefit for the participants for working on your V team, right? And you really want to frame things in a way that you're not asking them for their assistance, right? You are actually assisting them by being on the V team. Participants also must feel that it's a good value of their time. They must think, oh, wow, I want to be part of this project. This will accelerate my career. And in the V team, you really want to create this environment where everyone's valued. You want to reduce as much busy work as possible. If all of a sudden you start giving a lot of your great colleagues all these menial, repetitive tasks, they'll slowly disappear. And remember, as I said, as kind of captain of the V team, you're working for them. Now, there'll be a lot of activity that's going on in the V team. However, people outside the V team will not necessarily realize what's going on. So you really want to maintain some sort of communication plan for outside the V team. So your program is seen as progressing because you want your leadership to really feel comfortable that things are progressing. And another thing you want to do is take every opportunity to give people on your V team recognition. For example, I had a project that I was working on, and this program had a monthly newsletter, and I made sure to highlight everybody's good work in the program. All right, so how do you set up a V team? There's lots of ways to do it. This is what I do. I do this repeatedly, and it tends to work very well. So first of all, before I present anything to anybody, I come prepared, right? Whether that be a presentation, a demonstration, or something. You don't just want to sit there and say, hey guys, I need your help. So I use PowerPoints a lot. White papers I like. One-pagers if I'm doing kind of like a program for a new feature, etc. Whatever your organization uses to communicate initiatives, that's what you want to have prepared for your V team or potential V team. Now, you clearly want to articulate the VSEM and value proposition when you're talking about your program. We've covered that previously. Vision, strategy, implementation, and metrics. That's the VSEM, and then the value proposition. So make sure that's clear to everybody that you're working with in the V team. Now, if you're taking on an existing project, I recommend using a lean project pathway, really to highlight the future visioning state and how you need the V team to help with implementing whatever you found in the root cause analysis, right? And you really want to articulate why others should be participating in your team. Now, if I were managing the Tiger Coffee Machine program, this is what I would do, right? So the first thing I do is I actually go talk to my manager, right? I want to make sure my manager is on board for what I'm doing. Because if you don't have your manager's support, it's an uphill journey, right? So really make sure that you're aligned with your manager. And one thing I do when I'm actually speaking to my manager is I first identify the other teams I want to work with and the people I need in those teams possibly. So I actually ask my manager to go speak to the manager of the other teams. And I call this bridging. So once your manager has gotten the go-ahead from the managers of the other team, I first go to them and I try to sell them my program and why it's beneficial that team members join the V team. Because if you don't have their support, you're not going to get anywhere. And there is a finite amount of resources. So this is really important that you sell this on to them. Then after they say, yes, I like the program, this sounds like a great thing you're doing, I ask them to pick V team members, right? And you got to remember, a lot of these people on V teams, they might not be program managers. And if there is somebody that wants to go into program management, that might be a good resource. Or somebody who's not getting a lot of visibility, right? So really say, hey, can I work with someone on your team? And hopefully, and they'll usually come back to you with some names. And then I set up a kickoff meeting where I want to sell the project to that manager's entire team after I've gotten the V team member. Typically what I do, because nobody likes more meetings, I'll actually ask that manager, can I come into their team meeting and present the program. Now, whenever you have a meeting, not just for V teams, but any type of meeting, is you want to set up a cadence for these meetings, right? So maybe you'll have a meeting start off twice a week, and then as it gets more and more efficient, you'll go once a week, then once every 2 weeks, right? And then finally, you want to make sure everybody has deliverables. And a good way to do that is doing that RACI we talked about previously. Hey Tigers, what a great class. As you can see, looks like there was a party afterwards in the conference room. Bella's passed out, but at least they put the logos in the back of the chair like I had asked them. All right, we covered 3 important topics. The first thing we covered was the marketing mix. I covered the 7 Ps and how important it is for program managers to understand the strategy of releasing the product. You won't create this yourself, but you need to be aware of it. Then I jumped into the lean project pathway, which is very important for process improvement. This idea of eliminating waste, the way you look at what's today, what do you want to have in the future, and look at the gap and going from there. It's a very strong tool. And then finally, I covered virtual teams. There's one thing a program manager must be good at, and that's cross-group collaboration, and the virtual teams is the way you accomplish that. All right, we have some very interesting topics coming up next. I have the balanced scorecard, which you're probably thinking, I'm not going for an MBA. Why do I need to know that? But the balanced scorecard, once you connect to it, it's a great way to really excel your program. Then I talk about something very dear to me is voice of the customer. And I can do 20 videos on that, but I'll cover it in one. And then finally, I'll cover something that's not very exciting, but is a necessity. And that is documentation and communication. All right, I'll see you in the next class. And be good, Tigers. Bye-bye.